Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today I will be analyzing the company of Airbnb, which is one that I very much like. I have been a host of the platform and I have also used it when traveling abroad, and I have always had very positive experiences overall. Not only I like the fact that they are revolutionizing in a way the travel and tourism industry, but also, and the part that I like the most is that it has given the opportunity to normal people, maybe like you watching, like me, middle class, to generate some extra income from renting an extra room, an extra property that you might have, or just providing experiences. And this is something that I really like. Yes, the company is not going through the best of times, but we all know that this has been due to external circumstances and the situation that we are living. However, before we go into the full analysis, let me give you a very quick overview of the topics that we will be covering today. Firstly, I will be giving a very short introduction to Airbnb, although I'm pretty sure that most of you watching already know, so it will be super short. Then afterwards we'll be looking into some performance metrics, followed by analysis of the financials, and we will also be comparing them with that of its competitors, which I think it will be very interesting. And then we will go into the stock price and valuation, and finally I will be giving my personal opinion on the company, on the stock, and also my future plans with it. But with that said, and after I remind you that if you enjoyed this video, it would help me out massively if you could give it a like. Let's go for it. Airbnb, very quickly, in case you do not know, is a platform that connects homeowners with travelers. Essentially, if you have a home or a spare room and you want to rent it, you can just list it on Airbnb and make some money with it. The same goes when traveling. If you're traveling and you're looking for a place to sleep, you can look at an Airbnb and look for homes that maybe other people are renting, and then you can make use of those. Essentially, the platform was thought to be a peer-to-peer place, so regular people to regular people. The thing though is that, of course, businesses started or saw the opportunity as well, and they also got into the market. So now you can find yourself that there's somebody like a regular person like me that is living in a property and maybe just renting a spare room because I need the money. But you can also find companies that have several, or that manage several apartments, or maybe a whole building, that rent these apartments separately, and they use a distribution channel Airbnb. So then we could say that right now the platform is a bit of a mix between peer-to-peer but also B2C, so business to consumer. Leaving this aside, the way Airbnb makes money is that they charge a commission for each booking, and this commission is split between the host and the guest. The host pays a 3% commission from the price that it rents its property at, and the guest usually pays between, it's not fixed, so it can vary, and also in their website they don't even specify it, but it's usually between 12 and 15%. Also, right now I focus a lot on the traditional and how Airbnb started, but they also have another line of business, which is Airbnb Experiences, in which you, if you want, for instance, you can offer guided tours around your city because maybe you're a local and you know it very well, or you can offer a dinner at your house, cooking, traditional food, and these are all experiences, and you can also sell those in their platform. Alright, enough talking about Airbnb and its business model, and let's go into the numbers, which for me it's the most interesting part always. As you can already imagine, by the fact that Airbnb is part of the travel and tourism industry, they have not been doing precisely that well. And as we can see, if we get an overview, just during the year 2020, they had in total 193.2 million nights and experiences booked, which was down 41% year over year. In terms of gross booking value, this was of $23.9 billion, which means that people spent in the platform this much, and this was down 37% year over year. However, as we said, Airbnb earns money based on commissions, and this totaled around $3.4 billion in 2020. What I find interesting here is that if we divide the total revenue that they generated from the platform and the commissions that they got out of that, we see that on average they are getting a commission of 14.13%. Finally, as you can see, they reported losses again of $4.6 billion, which is a pretty crazy number as it is more than the revenues. However, according to Airbnb, this was mostly driven by the fact that they just had their IPO, and I didn't mention this so far, on December 2020, which means that they went public then, and this of course has a lot of costs, and they argue that most of these were driven due to the IPO. Personally, the fact that they are having so many losses does not worry me, because the business of Airbnb, it's a successful one. The more people use the platform to book accommodation or experiences, and also the more people advertise their properties or experiences in the platform, which means that they need to get as well known as possible across the globe. And of course, this takes a lot of money. Maybe for me, it's already a platform that is very well established, or at least across my circle of, friends, family. I think that they all know about Airbnb, probably that they all have used it, but of course I understand that this has not been spread still across the globe, and this is what they need to focus on, and unfortunately for that they need to spend a lot on marketing. But I'd much rather have them spend a lot of money on getting expanded all across the globe and really getting people to use them, than to stop now, focus just on profitability, and then maybe get left behind by a competitor that did spend the money on the marketing that was needed. Moving now into the figures, a metric that I want to share with you and I found super interesting is that the decline in the revenues that we saw before has only been driven by lower volume, as the average booking value per night an experience booked was 6% higher than in 2019. This is actually very positive for Airbnb, and I was even surprised because I thought that the fact that there was much less demand for properties would have pushed owners to lower their prices, but I see that in general this has not been the case and they have been higher. Now focusing just in revenues, in the image in the screen, you can see how these have evolved throughout the year. In Q1 of 2020, they stayed flat as the pandemic just started towards the end of the quarter. Then on Q2, revenues declined 72%, but then in the following quarters we can see a recovery with only 18% down in Q3 and 22% down in Q4. This was mostly driven by the fact that although people could not travel abroad maybe and take a plane and so on, they still wanted to do some kind of vacations, maybe closer to home, just go by car, and Airbnb offered lots of possibilities in this sense. Going deeper into the revenues trend, and if we analyze it since 2017, we can see that they were growing revenues roughly at 30 to 40% year over year until 2020, in which, as we saw, this decreased 30%. And I don't know about you, but I think that a 30% decline, considering the circumstances and how the travel and tourism industry has been affected, seems like a pretty great achievement to me, and just a proof of how resilient their business model is. In fact, to better illustrate this, I created a table that I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did preparing it, in which it showcases the percentage difference in revenues from 2019 to 2020 of several companies operating in the travel and tourism space. First, we have Airbnb, which, as you can already see by just having a quick look at the table, it is the one that had the smallest decrease. Comparing it first with airlines, although these obviously have faced more difficulties, Delta Airlines revenues were 63.63% lower than the previous year, Southwest ones were 59.66% lower, and American Airlines were 62.12% lower. Then looking at large hotel players, Marriott had a 49.59% decrease in revenues and Hilton a 54.43%. In the cruise line space, just to place one player here, Royal Caribbean had 79.83% less revenues. But the last two ones are the ones that for me are more interesting because they are, or they could be considered, the competitors of Airbnb. On the one hand, we have Booking.com, that I know that it has a slightly different business model, focused more on B2C, but in their case, they had a revenue decline of 54.89%, which is a lot more than Airbnb. And secondly, we have Expedia, which is the owner of HomeAway, which would be the largest competitor of Airbnb in the space of, let's say, renting rooms and apartments and so on. And I know that Expedia also owns many other businesses, and this is not the only line that they have, but still Expedia had a revenue decline overall of 56.91% year over year. Finally, to end with the financials, looking at the balance sheet, we can see that as of December 31st, 2020, they had a debt ratio of 72.34%, which is okay, but not extremely conservative. However, something that we clearly need to highlight is that they have almost $5.5 billion in cash or equivalents, which is almost enough to pay for the $7.5 billion in liabilities at once right now. So personally, the balance sheet looks very good. Next, I would like to talk a bit about the stock price and valuation of Airbnb and compare it with the competitors that we just mentioned now of Expedia and Booking.com. At the moment of preparing this video, Airbnb is trading at $144.22 per share. Let's see though by the time that you end up watching, because the market just keeps going down. But yeah, anyways, taking this, the shares outstanding and also the revenues it reported for 2020, we have that it currently has a price to sales ratio of 12.14 times sales, which is certainly demanding. But let's compare this with Expedia and Booking.com. In the case of Expedia, its price to sales ratio is of 4.49 times, and that of Booking is of 13.56 times. However, both of these companies have been growing at much slower paces than Airbnb has, so it makes sense that they have lower price to sales ratio. Oh, but wait, actually Booking.com, at the moment of making this video, because this has changed in the past 5 days since I started preparing the video, has a higher price to sales ratio than Airbnb, which is actually pretty crazy. Because of course the growth ahead of Booking.com, I don't think that it's the same as Airbnb. Anyways, if I had to choose between one of these three companies, I would certainly go with Airbnb, although the valuation is a bit demanding. So after everything that we have seen so far, it is time now for me to give my opinion on the company and the stock. As I already advanced at the beginning, I am a user of Airbnb. I very much like the company and the business. And something very good as well about the business is that the businesses using Airbnb to basically make money. So you imagine that you had lots of apartments, they basically need Airbnb or similar platforms like Booking or Expedia or whatever to sell their inventory. And if they don't use these platforms, probably through their website they are not able to fully book all of their properties, especially when we're talking about, large companies. And the good thing is that Airbnb in this sense, or Booking.com or Expedia, have basically the power to increase a bit the rates, the commissions that they charge, and companies will still use them because they have no other choice than this if they really want to sell the rooms. And distribution channels are playing an increasing role in the distribution of accommodation in the tourism industry, or at least it was pre-pandemic. Let's see how it turns out to be afterwards, but I do think that this trend will continue, and this is a very positive point on the side of Airbnb. Not only their business model is great, as we have just mentioned now, but also the travel and tourism industry is one that has a lot of potential. Before the pandemic, more and more people were traveling or having access to travel, and Airbnb provides a very comfortable and also convenient way of booking accommodation that also, as we mentioned before, gives opportunities to people or regular people who want to make some extra money, and also provides, let's say, more of a local experience that in some cases this is the case, but in some others not. So for instance, if somebody comes to my apartment and renting my room, I'm a local, maybe I can give that person some tips. I don't know, I can cook something typical from my country, which is something that maybe they would not experience going to a hotel. And this is kind of like the added value as well of Airbnb, although as I said, there are lots of businesses getting into that, so I think that it is losing a bit this part. In terms of revenue growth, looking into the future, I would expect them to grow at 30% year over year, maybe more, who knows, but I'm just saying this as well based on the data that we saw before. Nevertheless, at the moment, I think that its valuation is a bit expensive. Of course, during these past 2 weeks that the market has been going down, it has gotten more attractive. Personally, a price that I would consider adding more shares of, because I already own some, would be around $135 each, simply because I really like the company and I think that they will do great in the future, whether they grow more or less revenues in the short term. In any case, this is the end of the video. Remember that I'm no financial advisor and that I'm just sharing here my thoughts and my personal investigation in the company that I also use for myself and to determine whether I want to invest in a company or not, and that you should always do your due diligence. Anyways, what are your thoughts on Airbnb? Do you already own some shares of it? Do you think that maybe it's too overvalued, as we were just commenting? Do you see it? Do you see potential for it in the long term? Please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, then don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and as always, see you next time.